Sometimes, life begins with a single mistake, or maybe with a single dream. For him, it was both. He was 17, restless, beautiful in a way that didn't know it yet, and always searching for something beyond the walls that raised him. The world he was born into never felt like home. It was a house that wanted him silent, straight, and small. But there was too much color inside him for that. So one morning, he left. No letter, no goodbye. Just a small bag, a pair of torn jeans, and the soft echo of his mother calling his name through the hallway he'd never walk again. He took a bus that ran out of his small town and into the night. That's how freedom usually begins. Not with a plan, but with the refusal to stay. He found himself in Amsterdam, a city alive with light and sin, music and magic. It smelled of cigarettes and rain, laughter and perfume. Boys kissed in alleyways, girls danced under red lights. It was chaos, and yet, it felt like home. He wandered through neon streets, his heart drumming to the rhythm of every heartbeat around him, until he found it. A glowing sign at the end of the street, the House of Boys. A club like no other, part theater, part dream, part confession. A place where men danced not for survival alone, but for freedom, for joy, for the right to exist in their skin. He stepped inside, his breath caught by the air, thick with smoke, sweat, and the hum of music that felt alive. On stage, half-naked boys spun under pink light, their eyes glittering like stars and secrets. The crowd roared, the world blurred, and for the first time in his life, he felt seen. He was young, but the world in that room was older, sharp and seasoned. A man named Madame took his hand, a kind of mother, a survivor of decades of stories. She smiled at him like she'd seen this before. Another runaway chasing light. "Can you dance?" she asked. He nodded. "Then welcome home," she said. At first, it was just work. Learning the rhythm, painting his face with glitter, becoming someone else under the light. But nights have a way of changing you. Every song pulled him deeper. Every cheer from the crowd felt like a heartbeat pressed against his own. The club became his sanctuary, loud, reckless, forgiving. And that's where he met him. A boy with quiet eyes and the kind of smile that didn't need to speak to be understood. His name was Jake. He wasn't one of the performers, he was part of the crew. Strong, calm, and a little bit mysterious. The kind of man who made you feel safe even when everything else was spinning. At first, it was just glances. Between the lights, between the moments when the music dipped low and their worlds touched. But glances have a language, and soon, they were speaking fluently. One night, after closing, the club was silent. The floor still shimmered with the residue of glitter and sweat. He was sitting by the bar, his makeup smudged, his hands trembling with the weight of exhaustion. Jake walked over, placed a drink beside him, and said softly, "You don't have to pretend here. Not with me." It wasn't love at first sight. It was love after everything else. Love that began with kindness. Not lust, not hunger, just a quiet understanding. He smiled, and for the first time since leaving home, he felt something fragile and real, belonging. Days became nights, and nights became something like forever. They shared small things. Cigarettes on the balcony, stories of their pasts, laughter that felt like sunlight breaking through fog. Jake taught him how to cook cheap pasta in the club's tiny kitchen. He taught Jake how to dance without music. Sometimes, they'd walk by the river when the city slept, their reflections blurring into one on the dark water. It was the kind of love that didn't ask for permission. He started writing in a small notebook, his diary, his secret prayer. He looks at me like I'm not a mistake, like the world isn't cruel, just misunderstood. Like maybe we're both pieces of something broken that still remembers how to shine. But the world outside wasn't kind. In the early 80 seconds, there was a shadow growing, something nameless, whispered, feared. A sickness that crept into clubs like theirs, taking boys one by one. Posters went up. Protect yourself. Avoid contact. Whispers turned into panic, then into silence. Still, in their little world, they kept dancing, because sometimes love is an act of rebellion. He'd watch Jake from the stage, his steady hands fixing lights, his quiet eyes watching him with pride. It made every dance worth it. Every bruise, every drop of sweat, every moment he doubted himself. Then came the day everything shifted. Jake didn't show up for work. At first, no one noticed. Boys came and went. Faces changed, shows went on. But he noticed. He always noticed. He waited. Then he went looking. He found Jake at home, pale, trembling, feverish. The world had found them. The sickness had found him. Jake tried to laugh it off. "It's just the flu," he said. But his eyes told another story. A story of fear, of uncertainty, of the kind of silence that makes love ache. He stayed by his side every night after work. He brought him soup, medicine, warmth. He tried to believe that love could heal what the world refused to understand. The club began to change too. Some dancers disappeared quietly. Madame's face grew heavier with every empty dressing room. The music still played, but there was something missing beneath it. Joy, maybe, or innocence. He started writing again. The lights still shine, but they feel different now. Every song sounds like a goodbye. I'm not ready to sing. I think I finally understand what it means to love someone. It's when their pain becomes heavier than your own. One night, after everyone left, he and Jake sat on the empty stage. The spotlights were off, and the world felt small. Jake leaned his head on his shoulder. "Do you ever think about going back?" he asked. He shook his head. "There's nothing left there." Jake smiled faintly. "Then maybe we build something here." And for a while, they did. They built a home out of borrowed time. One kiss, one dance, one heartbeat at a time. But time doesn't stop for love. Jake grew weaker, and the doctors grew quieter. The sickness had no cure, no mercy, no name they dared to speak. He stayed anyway, not out of pity, but devotion. He bathed him, held him, made him laugh when the pain became too much. He kissed him gently, as if every breath could rewrite the ending. The club faded from their lives. The lights, the crowds, the glamour, all became ghosts. What remained was two boys in a small apartment, holding on to each other as the world outside turned cold. He wrote one last diary entry before the inevitable came. "He told me not to cry when it happens, but I think he doesn't understand. I already started. Every time he closes his eyes, I feel the world slow down. If love is the fire that saves us, then maybe this is how we burn." He never said goodbye that night. He just sat beside him until the morning came, and the light through the window painted everything gold. Jake was gone, and the city outside went on, pretending it hadn't noticed another star fade. He went back to the club once, weeks later. The lights flickered, the laughter echoed, but the magic was gone. He stood in the middle of the stage where he once danced like the world was endless, and whispered his name into the dark. It was then he realized, love doesn't die, it just changes shape. Maybe we don't get forever. Maybe all we get are moments fragile, shining, impossible. But if those moments are real, they're enough. After Jake was gone, the world became too loud. Every song on the radio felt wrong. Every streetlight looked colder. He'd wake up to silence, the kind that didn't wait to be filled. The kind that pressed on your chest like an invisible hand. He stopped dancing for a while. Stopped painting his face, stopped showing up to the club. Even Madame stopped asking. Maybe she understood grief doesn't answer questions. The city moved on, but he didn't. He stayed in the apartment they shared, half of it untouched, Jake's books still stacked by the bed, his jacket still hanging by the door. Sometimes he'd imagine him walking back in, saying something ordinary, like, "Did you eat?" But ghosts don't speak like that. They just linger. Weeks turned into months. There were days when he couldn't breathe, and nights when he couldn't sleep. But in between the darkness, something began to stir. He started writing again, not to remember, but to survive. The bed is too big without him. The coffee tastes like metal, but I still wake up. I still try. Maybe that's what love becomes when it has nowhere else to go. Persistence. The city was changing too. You could feel it in the air, a quiet morning behind the neon. Too many faces missing. Too many names not spoken aloud. Posters filled the walls again now with memorials instead of shows. The House of Boys had lost more than its dancers. It had lost its heartbeat. Madame, once vibrant and fearless, now moved slower, her voice quieter. She'd light candles backstage every night. No one asked for whom. Everyone knew. He returned one evening. The music was softer now, the lights dimmer. He stood by the bar where Jake once offered him that first drink. Madame saw him, smiled weakly, and simply said, "You're still one of us." Then she walked away, leaving him to face the ghosts himself. The stage waited empty, patient, forgiving. He stepped onto it again. Not to perform, not to be seen, but to remember. He closed his eyes, and for a moment, the lights seemed to hum like before. The crowd, the laughter, the rhythm, it all came rushing back, blurry but alive. He moved. Slowly at first, then fully not a dance for entertainment but for love. Every step was a memory. Every gesture, a confession. It wasn't the same performance. It was a farewell. Later that night, sitting by the river, he whispered to the wind, "I wish you could see me now. I'm still dancing, Jake. For you." The wind didn't answer, but it carried his voice across the water, scattering it like starlight. Life has a strange way of finding its rhythm again. It doesn't heal you, it reshapes you. He started helping at the club in new ways, behind the scenes, helping the younger boys who came in, scared and hungry, just like he once was. He became their quiet protector, the kind of man Jake had been for him. And in that, he found purpose. The House of Boys wasn't just a club anymore, it was a refuge. A place for broken wings to rest. He would sit backstage before every show, look at the dancers getting ready, and whisper softly to himself, "Don't let the world tell you who to be. You're already enough." Sometimes, he'd catch himself smiling at the smallest things, the way the lights flickered, the way someone laughed too loudly, the smell of rain outside the club. Grief was still there, but it no longer consumed him. It had turned into something quieter, softer, like an old song he'd learned to live with. He once wrote, "Love doesn't end when a heartbeat does. It lingers in the air, in the walls, in the space between every word we don't say." I used to think love was about holding on. Now I know it's about carrying forward. Years passed, and the world outside began to change again. Medicine, hope, awareness. Slowly, the shadow began to lift. But he never forgot those early days when love was dangerous, and being yourself could cost you everything. He grew older, gentler, wiser. His hair changed, his voice softened, but his eyes still carried that same glimmer of defiance, that same light Jake once loved. Sometimes, he'd walk through the city at night, passing the old places they'd been, the record store, the riverside, the tiny cafe where they shared a cigarette in the rain. The memories no longer hurt. They warmed him. One evening, he found Jake's old notebook hidden under a drawer, dusty and forgotten. He opened it, and inside, he found a single page written in Jake's careful handwriting. If love is what they say, patient, kind, and endless, then maybe it doesn't matter how long it lasts. Maybe it just matters that it existed. He sat there for a long time, the words resting like a heartbeat in his hands. He realized then that Jake never really left. He just became part of everything that came after. The next show at the club was different. He helped the new boys with their routines, fixed the lighting, checked the costumes. And before the curtain rose, he stood center stage once more, whispering into the darkness, "For the ones who danced before us, for the ones who couldn't stay, for the love that made us brave enough to keep going." The music started not the loud, glittering chaos of the old days, but something slower, soulful, full of memory. He didn't need applause anymore. He just needed to feel alive. And as the lights bathed him in gold, he felt it Jake's presence, the warmth, the forgiveness, the peace. Later that night, he wrote his final diary entry. "They say time heals. I don't think that's true. Time teaches. It teaches you that love doesn't need to last to be real. That some people arrive not to stay, but to awaken something inside you, something that never dies." He closed the notebook, smiled faintly, and turned off the light. Outside, the city was quiet again. The same streets where he once arrived as a frightened boy now held his footsteps like an old friend. He looked up the stars, the neon, the moonlight over Amsterdam and whispered, "Thank you, Jake, for teaching me how to live." Maybe this is how love survives. Not in forever, but in the way it shapes the ones left behind. He still dances sometimes, not under stage lights, but alone, in the dark of his room. Every movement a memory, every sigh a prayer. And somewhere, in the rhythm between beats, you can almost hear Jake's laughter again. Faint, distant, but enough to remind him that love never really leaves. We were young, we were foolish, we were alive. And that's enough to make this world beautiful. Because in the end, the House of Boys was never just a place. It was a heartbeat, fragile, bright, human. A reminder that love, even in its shortest form, is still the most eternal thing we ever touch. If this story found its way into your heart, if it reminded you of someone you've loved, someone you've lost, or someone you're still searching for, then stay a while. There are more stories here, of love that dares, of hearts that refuse to break quietly, of souls that burn bright, even when the world goes dim. Subscribe, so you don't miss the next heartbeat. And if you've ever loved someone enough to remember, leave a light in the comments. Someone out there might need it tonight.